Drain the swamp. How often do we hear that phrase bandied about by politicians when they're keen to signal that they're on our side? Often, politicians that we send to DC talk about Washington DC as the swamp, a place full of federal agencies run by officials making public policy without reference to the public. But what about the swamp closer to home? What about the army of unaccountable bureaucrats in Mississippi who are able to make public policy without reference to Mississippians? A new report out by the Mississippi Center for Public Policy has reviewed 222 government organizations, agencies, and boards. And we found that actually there is a swamp alive and well in downtown Jackson, Mississippi. So before we talk about draining the swamp in Washington, let's focus on what we can do to drain the swamp here in Mississippi. Of the 222 agencies that we reviewed, only a tiny number of them are headed up by somebody who's directly elected. And of all the appointees we reviewed, only a small portion are confirmed by the state Senate. That means that there's a huge number of officials here in Mississippi who are able to make public policy, able to spend public money, but don't answer properly to the public. Of course, there are plenty of departments and agencies that are essential for effective public administration. But Mississippi has dozens of organizations that frankly I think we could cope without. Do we, for example, really need to have an auctioneer commission? Or might we be able to cope without a board of physical therapists? There are plenty of states out there that don't have these entities. And might Mississippi be able to manage without the so-called Interior Design Advisory Committee? When Ronald Reagan came to Mississippi in 1980 and spoke at the Neshoba County Fair to launch his presidential campaign, he told the assembled mass of Mississippians, very famously, that when you create a government bureaucracy, no matter how well-intentioned it is at the outset, almost instantly its primary priority becomes the preservation of the bureaucracy. The Gipper was absolutely right back then, and sadly, what he said has become even more true to this day. Too many boards and commissions in our state are not meaningfully accountable to the people that they're supposed to serve. We think that this needs to change. So in our report, we've highlighted a number of things that could be done to make sure that the state bureaucracy here in Mississippi is properly accountable to Mississippians. Number one, we propose reining in the broad discretion that the state legislature has given to the bureaucrats, meaning that they should only do things if specifically mandated by those we elect to do them. Secondly, we've suggested so-called sunset clauses. This means that if the bureaucracy is established to do something, it should be reviewed after a period of time to make sure that it hasn't strayed beyond its original purpose. Thirdly, we propose ways in which the legislature could be much better at overseeing how public money is spent. Finally, we suggest that we might actually be able to cope without some of these entities at all. Maybe some of them need to be abolished. The truth is that the administrative state in Jackson opens the way to cronyism and to cartels. A lot of these positions have become a form of political patronage. This means that we have an economy in Mississippi that is, instead of being a free market economy, it's a cartel economy. In order for someone to do something, you need somebody else's permission. If Mississippi is going to thrive and prosper, we need to dismantle this cartel system. We need to do away with the restrictions and the restrictive practices. And we need to make sure that the boards and the commissions that we have are the ones that we really need. Our report shows how this can be done.